When we started reading this book of the Torah, the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, I mentioned that this is my favorite book of the Torah, of the 5 books of Moses. And one of the reasons is the complaining, all of the complaining that happens in this book. Some might say maybe that's why I'm a rabbi, I enjoy hearing people complain. But no, seriously, I just like having conversations with people. And Bamidbar is full of stories of people being people, of Jews being Jews, of us being ourselves. And that includes moments where we don't act in the best possible way. So I had 2 experiences this week that really made me think and that connect to a story of people being people and people not acting their best that is in this week's parashah. So these 2 experiences were of people saying rude things to me. So you're thinking only 2 rude things? No, but seriously, I have it good. As a rabbi, people are nice to me almost all of the time, and I do my best to reciprocate. It's really beyond what I deserve. But the reason why I've been thinking about this so much this week is that in these 2 different situations, I responded in 2 really different ways. Now, in the first situation, I had a snappy comeback. It wasn't rude, but it was definitely snappy, and I have to say, in the moment, it felt great. But the problem is afterward, when I saw the person again, I felt terrible. Now, in the second situation, the other person was rude, and I was polite. I was agreeable, I was appropriate, I was even trying to be constructive, and in the moment, it did not feel great. Even though I knew logically that I was being constructive, I still wanted to get back at the person in some way, to call them out, even though I knew in that situation that would be not constructive, that would be a waste of my time and effort. But afterward, even though I think back on the interaction and I'm like, that wasn't that fun, at least I can take comfort in the fact that I was appropriate and constructive. So when someone was rude and I snapped back, it felt great at the time and not great later. And when someone was rude and I responded calmly and constructively, it didn't feel great at the time, but it felt better later. So I'm thinking, how is this a thing? How did this happen? So now I'm going to this week's parashah. So we're on page 833 in the Eitz Chaim, chapter 12, verse 1 of the book of Numbers, for those following along with their eyes as well as their ears, totally optional. So here's what's happening. Miriam and Aaron speak against Moses. They spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married. And they said he married a Cushite woman. Now, if that's not rude, criticizing someone's spouse, I don't know what is. That is just hurtful. It was in those times, it is in these times. This situation does not seem like it's going anywhere in a constructive direction. So if this isn't going in a constructive direction, this story in our parashah, where is it going? So here's the next sentence. And so Moses and Aaron said, has God only spoken through Moses? Hasn't God spoken through us as well? So this isn't going anywhere constructive for Moses, but Aaron and Miriam do have an agenda. Seems like a fairly classic attempt at a power grab. So from the book of Numbers to now, people tend to behave in fairly consistent ways. You make the other person feel weak so that you feel strong. Hopefully other people will see you do this and go along with it. Maybe that's the point of all rudeness. Maybe that's true even if the rudeness happens in a one-on-one situation. I wish I could answer these big picture human essence questions, but I don't really know if I can. But back to my question this week, when someone is rude, what should you do? All right, we'll continue chapter 12, verse 2. We'll answer the question, but first a little bit of background in our story. So God heard what Miriam and Aaron had said. And now to our sentence. Now that man Moses was, here I'll switch to Hebrew, Moses was anav me'od. That man Moses was anav me'od. He was more so than anyone else on earth. Well, so what's anav me'od? Me'od is very much, and anav, that word is usually translated as humble. But in our modern American culture, humble means lowly, deferential, meek. And this is not what anav is meaning here. Anav means modest, unassuming. It's not that Moses was lowly and meek, it's that he was modest and unassuming. He was exceptional, but he didn't make a big deal about it. So when we say Moses is anav me'od, this is not just a good thing, but a really good thing. This is something that we can aspire to reach Moses' level. And so chapter 12, verse 4, back to our story. Suddenly God called to Moses and Aaron and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tent of meeting." So the three of them went out. Okay, so now we got to pay close attention in our story to who does what. So to recap, Aaron and Miriam were rude to Moses. Moses is minding his own business, working hard, being humble, modest, and unassuming, and God hears. So sentence 5, God came down in a pillar of cloud, stopped at the entrance to the tent, and called out, "Aaron and Miriam." The two of them came forward, and God said, "Hear my words. When prophets of God arise among you, I make myself known to them in a vision. I speak with them in a dream. But not so with my servant Moses. He's better than that. He's trusted throughout my household. With Moses I speak face to face, plainly, not in riddles, and Moses beholds the likeness of God. How then, you, Miriam and Aaron, how then did you not fear to speak against my servant Moses?" Still incensed with them, God departed. So what did God do? God called them out. God held them accountable. God made it clear that their rudeness was not acceptable. But wait, there's more. Verse 10, as God's pillar of cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam, stricken with snowy white scales. Aaron turned to Miriam and saw that she was stricken with these snowy white scales, and Aaron said to Moses, "Please, Adoni, please, my Lord, don't hold us to account for this sin which we sinned in our error. Let Miriam not be as one dead, who emerges from the mother's womb with half the flesh eaten away." Now we read in our Eitz Chaim commentary, it reminds us that Aaron is a priest. It's his job to diagnose these skin conditions. And so as soon as he saw his sister Miriam, he knew how serious her condition was. So not only did God call out Miriam and Aaron, God punished them by striking Miriam with a disease. So a logical question is, well, why not Aaron? So we've got to go back to chapter 12, verse 1, where this all started, and look at the Hebrew. So in Hebrew, the verse reads, "Vatidaber Miriam ba'Aharon," not "Vatidabru." Just Miriam was the one who started it. Even though Miriam and Aaron spoke, the translation or the conjugation of the verb indicates that it really did start with Miriam. But clearly, for Miriam's punishment, all three siblings are suffering. Miriam's ill, Aaron is terrified, and Moses, the one who is the victim of the rudeness, he's being asked to help. And he does. Chapter 12, verse 13, Moses cries out to God, saying, "Please, God, please heal her." In the face of really unnecessary rudeness to Moses, God holds the people being rude accountable, and Moses is gracious and helpful and compassionate. So back to my original question, my original observation. When I snapped back at another person's rudeness, I ended up feeling bad. But when I was appropriate and constructive, I did feel better. So this is what I take from this story. When someone's rude, whether someone cuts you off in traffic or someone makes a snide remark, it's not my responsibility, even though I sometimes wish it was, it's not my responsibility to punish them for their wrongdoing. Maybe the person deserves punishment, and maybe they don't. That piece of the situation isn't my business. But I think the touchiest part when someone's rude is to know how best to be a nav, how to be modest, how to be moderate. It very well might be in the face of rudeness that part of being moderate is telling the person with clarity and compassion that their behavior is not working for you. But what I take most deeply from this story is the example that Moses presents. This example of Moses crying out to God on behalf of the person that has been rude to him, praying for her well-being. Now, have I prayed for the well-being of the people who were rude to me this week? Well, not before I studied the story from this week's parashah. But we have an opportunity right now. We're about to begin our Musaf service. We'll soon have some moments for personal prayer and personal reflection. For those of us who have been through this whole week and not had a single person speak to us in rudeness, let's offer some prayers of gratitude for the kindness and generosity that exist in this world. And for the rest of us who have felt the sting of rudeness come our way this week, I invite us to try, just for a few moments, to follow the example of Moses, to share with God words of healing and blessing towards those who we have seen act in less than awesome ways. After all, acting in less than awesome ways, that is, making mistakes, is something that all of us human beings regularly do. Shabbat shalom.